I went to surprise my son on his first day at his father-in-law's company. I expected to see him in a boardroom, proving he'd earned that MBA. Instead, I found him on his knees in a corner office, polishing Italian leather shoes, while grown men laughed. "That's the only job this idiot is good for," his father-in-law sneered, pressing his polished shoe against my son's knee. 42 years of construction work. Every dollar saved. Every sacrifice. It meant nothing in that room. I said nothing. I walked out. And I made a call. 10 days later, the man who humiliated my son was the one fighting to keep his seat at that same table. Welcome to Family Revenge Stories, and thank you for spending your time with me today. Before we go any further, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, and how old are you right now? I'm genuinely curious who's walking through these stories with me. And when you finish this story, rate it from 1 to 10. Your support truly helps me create even better stories for you. Also, please understand, this story contains some Hugh elements added for narrative and learning purposes. Any resemblance to actual names or settings is purely coincidental, but the message I'm sharing with you is meant to matter. 6 a.m. came early, but I'd been awake since 5. 42 years of construction work had trained my body to wake before dawn. Rain or shine, summer or winter, my eyes opened while the world was still dark. Old habits die hard, especially the ones earned swinging hammers and framing houses across Portland. I stood at the kitchen stove, our cast iron pan already heating up. The smell of coffee filled the small house, a modest 3-bedroom ranch in northeast Portland I'd bought back in '96, paid it off in 15 years. The kitchen wasn't fancy. Chipped Formica countertops. Cabinets I'd installed myself. But it was ours. On the mantel in the living room, visible through the kitchen doorway, sat a photo of Susan, my wife, Jordan's mother. Gone 19 years now, but some mornings I still turned to tell her something before remembering she wasn't there. Today felt like one of those mornings. I cracked 3 eggs into the pan. Bacon sizzled in the other skillet, thick cut from the butcher on Hawthorne, Jordan's favorite. I'd bought the good stuff yesterday because today mattered. His first day at Sterling Hospitality, working for his father-in-law. That last part sat heavier in my chest than I wanted to admit. When Jordan married Carolyn Hartley 2 years ago, I'd been happy for him. She was beautiful, educated, from a family with money and connections. Her father, Victor Hartley, owned Sterling Hospitality, one of the biggest luxury hotel and restaurant groups in the Pacific Northwest. Now Victor had offered Jordan a position, management track, real salary, real future. It should have been perfect, so why couldn't I shake this feeling? I heard Jordan's footsteps on the stairs. He appeared in the kitchen doorway wearing a navy suit that probably cost more than I used to make in a week. Tailored perfectly. A gift from Caroline. His tie was silk, his shoes polished to a mirror shine. My son looked like he belonged in boardrooms, not in our worn kitchen with its faded linoleum. "Morning, Dad?" His voice carried that nervous edge I recognized from every first day of his life. First day of school, college interviews, his wedding. Morning, coffee. No thanks, I'm already jittery. I slid eggs and bacon onto a plate, set it at his usual spot. The same chair he'd sat in since he was 8 years old. "Eat. Can't start working for the Hartleys on an empty stomach." He sat down immediately, fidgeting with his tie. "Caroline says her dad's excited to have me on the team. Real opportunity to learn the business from the ground up. That's good." I poured my coffee, leaned against the counter. Working for family can be complicated sometimes. Jordan looked up. "What do you mean?" "It just means you might have to work twice as hard. Prove you earned it on your own merit, not just because you're married to the boss's daughter. I know, Dad. I'm ready for that. But I saw the doubt flicker in his eyes. My son had always been brilliant MBA with honors, top of his class, but he carried this weight, like he was always waiting for someone to tell him he didn't belong. You earned this position, I said firmly. Don't let anyone, family or not, tell you different. He nodded, returned to his breakfast. Your mom would have been proud, I said quietly. Seeing you in that suit starting your career, his throat worked. I wish she'd been there. At the wedding. Today. All of it. She was. She is. I tapped my chest. Right here. Sees everything. We ate in comfortable silence. After Susan passed cancer, brutal and fast, when Jordan was 12, it had been just us. Me working double shifts to keep him in good schools. Him studying late into the night, determined to make something of himself. To prove all those sacrifices meant something. Now here we were. When he stood to leave, I walked him to the door. He grabbed his briefcase, leather expensive, another gift from the Hartleys, and turned back. Thanks, Dad, for everything. For breakfast, for working yourself half to death to put me through college, for... Hey, I gripped his shoulder. That's what fathers do. Now get out of here before Victor thinks his new hire shows up late. Jordan grinned. For a moment, the nervousness disappeared. Then he was out the door, walking to his Honda in the driveway, practical car he'd insisted on buying himself, even after marrying into money. That was my boy. I stood on the porch, watching him back out. Early March morning, cool enough to see your breath. The neighbor's maple was just starting to bud. Jordan waved as he pulled away, and then he was gone. I should have gone inside. I had work a bid to finish for a renovation on Division Street, paperwork piling up. The usual. But I couldn't move. I stood there, hands in my pockets, staring at the empty street where his car had been. And that feeling in my chest, the one that had woken me at 5 instead of 6, wouldn't leave. Something wasn't right. I'd learned to trust that feeling over the years. Construction sites teach you. The moment before scaffolding fails or a measurement's wrong, there's always a feeling. A heaviness. Your gut saying, pay attention. I was paying attention now. Jordan was smart, capable. He'd earned that MBA earned his credentials. Yes, Victor was his father-in-law, but Jordan had the skills to back it up. So why did I feel like I just watched my son walk into something he wasn't prepared for? I tried shaking it off, went inside, washed dishes, changed into work clothes, sat down with my laptop and those project files. But I couldn't focus. By 11 o'clock, I'd read the same paragraph 6 times. My coffee had gone cold. That weight in my chest had grown into something I couldn't ignore anymore. I picked up my phone, put it down, picked it up again. He's 31 years old, I told myself. Married, starting his career. Doesn't need you hovering. I stared at Susan's photo on the mantel. She would have known what to do. What do you think, honey? I asked the empty room. Am I being crazy? But I could almost hear her voice. Trust your gut, Edward. You've never been wrong about our boy. I stood up, made a decision. I'd swing by Sterling Hospitality, just to see how his first morning was going. Maybe bring him lunch, just to check in, just to quiet this feeling that something I couldn't name yet was very, very wrong. I grabbed my truck keys and headed for the door. By the time I hit downtown Portland, that knot in my gut had tightened into something I couldn't ignore. Traffic was heavier than I'd expected for a Monday morning. I navigated through delivery trucks and sedans, my old Ford F-150 feeling more out of place with every block. The closer I got to the financial district, the taller the buildings grew, glass and steel reaching up into the gray March sky. Sterling Hospitality's headquarters sat on a corner lot impossible to miss. 20 stories of reflective windows and polished chrome. The kind of building that said money in every line of its architecture. The kind of place where guys like me usually showed up through the service entrance with a toolbox. I pulled into the parking garage, found a spot between a silver Mercedes and a black Lexus. My truck looked like it had wandered into the wrong neighborhood. Paint faded. Dent in the passenger door from a lumber delivery gone wrong 3 years back. Work truck through and through. I sat there for a moment, hands on the wheel. What are you doing? Edward Jordan's 31. He doesn't need you checking up on him like he's in grade school. But that feeling wouldn't leave. I got out, walked toward the lobby entrance. The automatic doors whooshed open into a space that probably cost more to decorate than my entire house. Marble floors, modern art on the walls that I didn't understand. Everything clean and cold and expensive. A young woman sat at the reception desk, blonde hair pulled back, wearing a headset. Her nameplate read, Lisa Morgan. "Good morning, sir. How can I help you?" Professional smile. Practiced. "I'm looking for my son, Jordan Foster. He started today." The smile froze. Something crossed her face, pity maybe. Fear. Her eyes flicked toward the elevators, then back to me. "Oh, Mr. Foster, let me check on that for you." She reached for her phone, but I was already moving toward the elevators. "Sir, maybe you should wait." I didn't wait. The elevator ride to the 3rd floor felt endless. Soft music played. The kind of instrumental stuff designed to keep you calm. It wasn't working. The doors opened onto the executive suite. Thick carpet. More art. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. A hallway stretched ahead. Doors on either side with brass nameplates. I followed the signs. Past offices with closed doors, voices murmuring behind them. And then I heard it. Laughter. Male voices. That particular kind of laughter that comes when someone's the butt of a joke they're not in on. I rounded the corner. One door stood half open. The laughter came from inside. Something in my chest went cold. I walked quietly to that door, pushed it open, and stopped. Jordan was on his knees in the middle of a massive corner office. Mahogany desk. Leather chairs. Windows overlooking half of Portland. And my son, my boy, with his MBA and his honors degree, was on his knees on that expensive carpet. Victor Hartley sat in his executive chair, one foot propped up on Jordan's knee. My son held a yellow polishing cloth, buffing the leather of Victor's shoes. Italian leather. Probably cost more than Jordan's monthly rent. "You missed a spot." Victor's voice dripped with contempt. "Right there. Or are you as blind as you are useless?" 2 men stood near the desk. Suits that cost more than my truck. One was older, gray at the temples. I'd later learn his name was Charles Warren, Victor's lawyer. The other was younger corporate type Kevin Bradley. Both of them watching, grinning. "Maybe he needs more practice," Charles said. Give him a few weeks," Kevin added. "He might work his way up to cleaning toilets." They laughed. Jordan's hands trembled. His face burned red. The same face that had lit up with pride at breakfast this morning. Now twisted with shame. Then he looked up, saw me standing in the doorway. Our eyes met, and I watched my son break. His eyes said everything his voice couldn't. "Dad, please. Please don't make this worse. Please just go." Every muscle in my body wanted to move. To cross that office, to pull Jordan up off his knees, to put Victor Hartley through that plate glass window behind his desk. I'd spent 42 years swinging hammers, building things. My hands knew how to work. They also knew how to fight when they needed to. One punch, that's all it would take. One swing and Victor's perfect nose would never be perfect again. But Jordan's eyes held me frozen, that silent plea, the fear underneath the shame. He was begging me not to make it worse. I forced my hands to unclench, forced my breathing to steady. "Can I help you?" Victor's voice cut through the room. He hadn't even bothered to move his foot from my son's knee. I looked at him, really looked at him. 52 years old, silver hair slicked back, expensive suit. The kind of man who'd never done real work a day in his life. The kind who thought money and power meant he could treat people like furniture. "I'm Jordan's father." Victor's expression shifted. Surprise, then something uglier. Amusement. "Ah, Mr. Foster, your son is learning the business from the ground up." He gestured at Jordan with his free hand. Literally. Charles and Kevin laughed again. "Come on, Jordan," Victor continued. "Show your dad what you've learned on your first day. Make those shoes shine." I looked at my son, at the yellow cloth in his shaking hands, at the way he couldn't meet my eyes anymore. "We'll talk later, son," I said. My voice came out calmer than I felt. Then I looked at Victor, held his gaze. "You and I will talk too, Mr. Hartley." Victor waved a dismissive hand. "I'm a busy man, Mr. Foster. You'll make time." Something in my tone made his smirk falter. Just for a second, I turned and walked out. Down that hallway with its thick carpet and expensive art. Into the elevator. Through the marble lobby. Out those automatic doors. To my truck. I sat in the driver's seat. Hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. Staring at nothing. The image wouldn't leave my head. Jordan. On his knees. Victor's foot pressing down. That yellow cloth. The laughter. My son. My boy. I don't know how long I sat there. Could have been 5 minutes. Could have been 20. Then I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I knew by heart. "Gregory, it's Edward." My voice was steady now, cold. "I need your help. Something big." I drove home in silence. The city blurred past traffic lights, storefronts, people walking dogs, but I didn't see any of it. My hands gripped the steering wheel at 10 and 2, the way Susan used to remind me when I got distracted. "Give me 24 hours, Gregory had said. 24 hours felt like a lifetime. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. Jordan's truck wasn't there. He'd texted around 7 long first day. "Staying at Caroline's tonight. Talk tomorrow." I read that message 3 times looking for what he wasn't saying. I didn't eat dinner. Stood in the kitchen for a while, staring at the stove, but nothing in the fridge looked right. Eventually, I just poured a glass of water and took it to the living room. The mantel caught my eye. 2 frames side by side, Susan on our wedding day. That cream-colored dress. That smile that made everything make sense. Jordan at graduation. Cap tilted wrong. Grin that said he was ready to take on the world. I picked up Susan's photo. Traced the edge of the frame with my thumb. "I promised you I'd take care of him," I said to the empty room. The clock on the wall ticked. The heater hummed. Nothing else. I set the photo down and walked to the kitchen table. Sat in the dark with my hands folded, staring at the grain of the wood. 42 years I'd worked. Saved every extra dollar. Lived small so Jordan could live big. And now some man in an expensive suit thought he could take my son's dignity, and grind it under his Italian leather heel. What kind of father just walks away from that? The kind who's planning something, I thought. The kind who's not finished yet. I stayed at that table until sunrise. My phone rang at 6 in the morning. Gregory's name on the screen. Milliner Cafe, 30 minutes. The line went dead. I grabbed my jacket. Milliner was a neighborhood place on the east side, duct tape on the booth seats, coffee strong enough to strip paint. Gregory was already there when I walked in, laptop open, papers spread across the table like a battle plan. He looked up. "You look terrible." "Didn't sleep." Figured." He pushed a cup toward me. Black coffee, still steaming. "Drink that." I sat down and took a sip. Burned my tongue. Didn't care. Gregory leaned back and folded his arms. "Victor Hartley is drowning." "How bad?" $18.5 million bad. I set the cup down carefully. "Say that again." Sterling Hospitality is underwater. 4 major projects tanked in the last 2 years. Luxury hotel in Portland never opened, restaurant in Seattle closed after 6 months. 2 smaller developments that bled money from day one. Hartley's been living like a king while his empire crumbles. The mansion's mortgaged to the roof. The cars are leased. He's been juggling creditors for months, and the music's about to stop. How long? 90 days, maybe less. When the banks move in, they liquidate everything. 140 employees lose their jobs. Hartley loses the company, the house, the cars. Everything. I stared at the papers spread across the table. Red numbers everywhere. And Jordan, in theater. Hartley's trying to look legitimate, like he's still building something. But it's all smoke. Gregory slid a spreadsheet toward me. "Here's what you need to know. The company's worth about $4 to $5 million if you liquidate it tomorrow. But if you want controlling interest enough to actually save it, you need a bigger number." How much bigger?" He tapped the paper. $11.2 million. That buys you 65% ownership and pays off enough debt to keep the doors open. Anything less, and it all falls apart anyway. $11.2 million. I sat back, did the math in my head. My retirement account, the house equity, the savings account I'd been building since Jordan was born. It was all there, just barely. "Edward," Gregory's voice was quiet. Don't what? "Whatever you're thinking, don't do it." I looked at him across the table. 20 years of friendship. He knew. "I've got the money," I said. His face went pale. "That's your entire retirement. I know what it is. 42 years of savings. Every dime you've ever put away. If this doesn't work, if Hartley fights back or the banks won't play ball, you lose everything. You'd have nothing left." "I know." Jordan. I pulled out my phone, opened the photos, scrolled to Jordan's graduation picture. That crooked smile, that bright future he was supposed to have. I turned the screen toward Gregory. "How much is my son's dignity worth?" I asked quietly. Gregory stared at the photo, then at me. The cafe noise dishes clattering, someone ordering at the counter felt far away. Finally, he exhaled and rubbed his face with both hands. "Everything you've got, apparently." I put the phone away, looked at the spreadsheet again. The numbers didn't scare me anymore. "Then let's get to work," I said. By 2 o'clock that afternoon, I was sitting in my home office with 3 phone numbers written on a notepad. Gregory had left the cafe an hour earlier with instructions to set up the corporate structure. My job was simpler and harder at the same time, turn 42 years into $11.2 million. I dialed the first number. "Foster, is that you?" The voice belonged to my real estate agent, a woman named Sandra, who'd sold me 3 rental properties back in 2008 when everyone else was running scared. I'd bought them for pennies on the dollar while the market burned. Sandra, I need to sell. Which one? All three. Silence on her end. Then, Edward, those properties are cash cows. You clear $6,000 a month. I know what they clear. How fast can you move them? Days. Maybe a week if the buyers are serious, but do it! Whatever the market will bear. I need the money fast. She didn't ask why. 20 years in the business had taught her when to keep quiet. The second call was to my broker. Mr. Foster, what can I do for you? Liquidate everything. I'm sorry. The entire portfolio. Stocks, bonds, mutual funds, sell it all. I want cash in my account by Friday. He cleared his throat. Sir, that's... Are you sure you've been building this for decades? $500 a month since the 90s. The market's up right now. If you wait, I'm not waiting. Sell it. Another pause. Then the sound of typing. It'll take a few days to process, but I can have it done by end of week. May I ask? No, I hung up. The third call was the hardest. Eugene Davis answered on the second ring. I'd known him for 15 years, watched him work his way up from teller to senior loan officer at the regional bank downtown. Good man. Steady. Edward, how can I help you? I need to withdraw my retirement fund. All of it. The entire account. Yes. Edward, that's a significant decision. There are tax implications, penalties. I know. I need it anyway. I could hear him shifting papers. Can I ask what this is for? Family matter. He was quiet for a long moment. Okay. I'll need you to come in and sign some paperwork. We can have the funds available by Thursday. Thank you, Eugene. Edward, are you sure about this? I looked at the photo on my desk. Jordan, at 10 years old, holding his first fish, grinning like he'd caught a whale. I'm sure. By Wednesday morning, the numbers were adding up. The properties would bring in $4.1 million. The investment portfolio, $3.8. Retirement fund, $3.3. It left me short by about $50,000. But Gregory had a solution, a bridge loan from a credit union he knew backed by my house equity. It would work. Just barely. But first we needed cover. Gregory met me at a coffee shop on the west side with incorporation papers already drawn up. Pacific Northwest Investment Group, he said, sliding the folder across the table. Registered yesterday. Anonymous LLC. Your name doesn't appear anywhere. Who's running it? We need 3 people. Business types who can walk into a boardroom and look legitimate. I've got names. I opened the folder. 3 resumes. Brian Mitchell, real estate investor. I'd helped him avoid bankruptcy 5 years ago when a deal went south. He owed me. Timothy Brooks, former contractor. I'd loaned him $20,000 to keep his crew employed during the recession. He'd paid me back with interest and gratitude. Roger Bennett. Eugene Davis had vouched for him. Corporate governance, experience, clean reputation, could talk the language of boardrooms. They'll do it, I asked. Mitchell already said yes. Brooks will follow your lead. Bennett needs convincing, but Eugene's working on him. I looked at the names. 3 strangers who'd walk into Sterling Hospitality, pretending to represent investors who didn't exist. Will it hold up? Long enough, Gregory said. Victor's desperate. He's not going to scrutinize the paperwork too hard if the money's real. And the money was real. That was the part that made my chest tight. That night, my phone rang at 9:30. Jordan's name on the screen. Hey, kiddo. Dad. His voice sounded hollow, empty. I don't know how much longer I can do this. I closed my eyes. What happened today? It doesn't matter. It's all the same. Every day's the same. Jordan, I'm not weak. I know you raised me better than this. But I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Every part of me wanted to tell him, hold on. Just a few more days. I'm fixing this. But I couldn't. Not yet. If Victor caught wind of anything, the whole plan collapsed. Listen to me, I said, keeping my voice steady. Just a little longer. Can you do that? I don't. For me, just a little longer. He was quiet, then, okay, yeah, okay. I love you, son. Love you too, Dad. The line went dead. I sat there in the dark of my living room, staring at the stack of liquidation papers on the coffee table. Each one represented a piece of my life. The rental properties I'd bought during the crash, the investment account I'd fed like clockwork for 30 years, the retirement fund I'd thought would carry me through my 70s. Gone, all of it. Signed away in 3 days. I picked up the last document, the bridge loan agreement that put my house on the line, and signed it. No turning back now, and Jordan still had no idea what I was doing. The call came Tuesday night, while I was reviewing loan documents at my kitchen table. Jordan's name flashed on my phone. Hey, kiddo. Dad. His voice was flat. Today I had to shine shoes again, in front of clients. I set my pen down. Tell me what happened. Victor had a meeting. 3 people from some hotel chain in Seattle. I was bringing in coffee and he looked at me and said, Jordan, my shoes could use some attention. See, like it was nothing. Like I was hired help. What did you do? What could I do? I got the polish kit and did it. Right there in the conference room while they talked about expansion plans. One of the clients asked if I was new to hospitality services. Victor just laughed and said I was still learning the ropes. I closed my eyes. I'm sorry, son. It's fine. It's whatever. I just needed to hear your voice. You're doing great, Jordan. He sounded so tired. Because it doesn't feel like it. After he hung up, I sat there staring at Peter Donovan's business card. The lawyer Gregory had recommended to handle the acquisition paperwork. I'd met with him that afternoon. Sharp guy, asked good questions. Didn't judge when I explained what I needed. But none of it mattered if Jordan broke before we were ready. Wednesday at noon, my phone rang again. I was at a coffee shop meeting with Brian Mitchell, going over his role as lead representative for Pacific Northwest Investment Group. Dad, can I call you back? Jordan asked. I'm on lunch. No, talk to me now. He exhaled. I cleaned the executive boardroom this morning, vacuumed, took out the trash. Then Victor sent me to pick up his dry cleaning. 40-minute drive each way. Brian looked at me across the table. I turned away slightly. They're testing you, I said quietly. For what, to see if I'll quit? Because I'm close, Dad. I'm really close. Just a little longer. You keep saying that. Because it's true. He was quiet for a moment. Caroline says her dad's impressed with my work ethic. Says this is just temporary. That he's testing my professional integrity. My jaw tightened. Caroline. Always Caroline, feeding him just enough hope to keep him compliant. Maybe, I said, keeping my voice neutral. I have to go. Love you. Love you too. Brian waited until I pocketed the phone. That your son... Yeah. He okay. Not yet, but he will be. We went back to reviewing his script, what to say when we walked into Sterling Hospitality, how to present the investment offer, what questions to deflect. Timothy Brooks and Roger Bennett would join us tomorrow for a full rehearsal. Everything had to be perfect, because if Victor smelled anything wrong, the whole thing collapsed. Thursday evening, Jordan called after work. His voice sounded different, smaller. They had a business lunch today. Victor made me serve them. Serve, like a waiter. Brought out the food, refilled drinks, cleared plates. One of the clients thought I was from the catering company. Victor didn't correct him. I stood up from my desk and walked to the window. Looked out at the street where Jordan used to ride his bike when he was 8 years old. Did anyone say anything? I asked. No. Everyone just let it happen. Except this one maintenance guy, Henry. He was fixing a door nearby, and after the lunch ended, he found me in the break room. Sat down and ate with me. Didn't have to do that. Everyone else avoids me now. Henry Tucker. You know him. No, but I want to remember his name. Jordan was quiet for a second. He told me not to let them break me. Called me kid. It was the nicest thing anyone said to me all week. After we hung up, I added Henry Tucker to a list I'd started keeping. People who'd shown Jordan kindness. It was a short list. One name, but it mattered. Friday night, day 5. I was exhausted from finalizing the shell company paperwork and coordinating with Eugene Davis on the fund transfers. The properties had sold faster than expected. Sandra was good at her job. The investment portfolio liquidation would clear Monday. The retirement withdrawal was processing. $11.2 million. 42 years. Everything. My phone rang at 8 o'clock. Dad, I think it's almost over. I straightened. What do you mean? Caroline talked to me after work. She said I'm almost through this probationary phase, that things will get better soon. Her dad's going to move me to a real position next week. I heard the hope in his voice, the trust he still had in her. It made my chest ache. That's good, son. She's been really supportive through all this. I know you had your doubts about her, but she's been there for me. I looked at the papers spread across my desk. The acquisition offer Gregory had drafted. The schedule that would put Brian, Timothy, and Roger in front of Victor's board in less than a week. Caroline was lying. I knew it in my bones. This wasn't a probationary phase. This was Victor breaking Jordan down for sport while his company drowned in debt. And Caroline was his accomplice, keeping Jordan compliant with false promises. But I couldn't tell him. Not yet. If Jordan confronted Caroline or Victor, if he gave any indication he knew something was coming, they'd shut down, get defensive, make the acquisition impossible. So I had to let him suffer just a little longer. Hang in there, son, I said quietly. You're almost through it. Thanks, Dad. I knew you'd understand. After he hung up, I sat in the dark of my office for a long time. Each phone call was like a knife. Each story of humiliation, another cut. But I had to let it happen. Had to let Jordan believe Caroline's lies while I built the trap that would end it. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but it was the only way. Saturday morning, I walked into Peter Donovan's office with a folder full of bank statements and property deeds. His firm occupied the 3rd floor of a building, downtown, clean lines, glass walls, the smell of fresh coffee. Edward, he stood and shook my hand. Right on time. Let's go over everything. We spent 2 hours at his conference table reviewing the acquisition documents. Pacific Northwest Investment Group looked legitimate on paper, registered business, clean corporate structure, 3 credible representatives lined up. The offer was straightforward, $11.2 million for 65% ownership of Sterling Hospitality contingent on Victor Hartley stepping down from operational control. It's solid, Peter said, closing the last folder. The shell company's clean. They won't know you're behind it until it's too late. And legally no holes. None. As long as the funds clear and the board approves, it's done. Victor loses control. I leaned back in my chair. For the first time in days, I felt something close to confidence. How long until we can move? No, the funds need to settle first. Once they're in Pacific Northwest's account, we can make the formal offer. Monday, maybe Tuesday. I nodded. Let's do it. By Saturday afternoon, the money had started arriving. Sandra's sales had closed fast, 3 rental properties sold to investors who paid cash. The stock portfolio liquidation hit my account around 2 o'clock. Eugene Davis called to confirm the retirement fund withdrawal had processed. I sat at my kitchen table that evening with a calculator and a legal pad adding it all up. 4.1 million from the properties, 3.8 from investments, 3.3 from retirement, 11.2 million, exactly. 42 years of my life converted to numbers on a screen. I stared at the total for a long time. Then I called Eugene and authorized the transfer to Pacific Northwest Investment Group's business account. By Monday morning, everything would be in place. Maybe this will actually work, I said to the empty kitchen. The house didn't answer. But for once, the silence felt hopeful. Sunday morning at 8 o'clock, someone knocked on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. Gregory knew to call first. Jordan was still staying at Caroline's most nights. I looked through the peephole and saw a man in a dark suit standing on my porch. Late 40s, maybe 50, with the kind of grooming that suggested authority. I opened the door. "Can I help you?" He pulled out a badge. Officer Raymond Kemp, Portland Financial Crimes Unit. "Are you Edward Foster?" My chest tightened, but I kept my voice level. "I am." May I come in?" I stepped aside. He walked into my living room with the careful confidence of someone who'd done this before. Too smooth, too rehearsed. "What's this about?" I asked. He didn't sit. Just stood near the mantel looking at Susan's photo like he was cataloging everything in the room. "We've been monitoring some unusual financial activity associated with your accounts. Large asset sales, multiple bank transfers, patterns that triggered our automated review systems. I'm making an investment. It's all legal." "I'm sure it is." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "However, we need to freeze certain accounts pending investigation. Standard procedure for transactions of this magnitude." "On what grounds?" "Anti-money laundering protocols. When someone moves this much money this fast, we have to verify the source and destination. It's federal law, Mr. Foster." "I'm not laundering money." "I didn't say you were." The smile again. Professional, practiced, and something else underneath something that made my skin crawl. "But until we complete our review, those funds need to stay put. Shouldn't take more than a few weeks." "A few weeks." My timeline collapsed in real time. "I have lawyers," I said quietly. "Of course you do. They'll receive the paperwork Monday morning." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded document. "This is a copy of the freeze order. Your attorney can challenge it if you'd like, but these things take time." He handed me the paper. Our fingers touched for a second, and that's when I saw it, the way his mouth curved, the cold satisfaction in his eyes. I'd seen that expression before. On Victor Hartley's face when my son was on his knees. Kemp walked to the door, then turned back. "Have a good day, Mr. Foster. We'll be in touch." He left. I stood there holding the freeze order, watching through the window as he got into an unmarked sedan and drove away. Then I grabbed my phone and called Gregory. "Victor knows," I said when he picked up. "Someone leaked. He's using a cop to block me." "What, Edward? I just had a visit from Portland Financial Crimes. They're freezing my accounts. The officer smiled at me the same way Victor smiled at Jordan. Silence on Gregory's end. Then, how is that even possible? We've been so careful. I don't know, but find out who talked. I hung up and immediately dialed Peter Donovan. We have a problem, I said. The police just froze my accounts. Peter was quiet for a beat. On what grounds? Money laundering investigation, anti-terrorism protocols. It's garbage, but it's legal. I can fight it. File a challenge. Get you a hearing. How long? Days, maybe a week. Depends on the judge. A week. The money was trapped. The timeline shot. And somewhere Victor Hartley was probably laughing. Do what you can, I said. Fast. After I hung up, I sat on my couch and read the freeze order 3 times. Professional language, proper legal format, everything technically correct. But it wasn't about the law. It was about control. I was fighting on 2 fronts now, the business deal and a corrupt cop. And Victor had just shown me he had reach I hadn't anticipated. But he'd also shown me something else he was scared enough to strike first, which meant I was close. At 2 o'clock Sunday afternoon, I was back in Peter Donovan's office staring at a stack of legal briefs that might as well have been written in another language. I can file a motion, Peter said, tapping his pen against the desk. Challenge the freeze on constitutional grounds. But getting your accounts unlocked will take time. Maybe weeks. I don't have weeks. The banks will foreclose on Sterling in 90 days. I understand. But the system moves at its own pace, Edward. Kemp filed everything properly. We have to work within the law. I stood and walked to the window. Downtown Portland stretched out below traffic, pedestrians, people living normal lives while mine fell apart. Do what you can, I said. Fast as possible. I will. I left his office with nothing resolved. Victor had bought himself time and I was stuck playing defense. I was driving home when my phone rang at 4 o'clock. Jordan's name on the screen. I answered immediately. Hey, kiddo. Dad. His voice sounded wrong, shaking, broken in a way I'd never heard before. I pulled over. What happened? I need to tell you something. Okay, I'm listening. He took a breath. I could hear it rattle. I was working from home this afternoon. Victor sent me back with some paperwork to review. Caroline was in the next room on the phone. She didn't know I could hear her. My chest tightened. What did she say? She was talking to someone. Maybe a friend. I don't know. Another shaky breath. Dad, she said she's not pregnant. She told me she was pregnant to make me stay, to keep me from quitting. The world went very still. She said what? She's not pregnant. She never was. She lied to me. His voice cracked. That's the only reason I kept going back. I thought we were building something. For our kid. For our family. I gripped the steering wheel with my free hand. Jordan. I confronted her after the call ended. Asked her to tell me the truth. He laughed, but it was hollow. She didn't even try to deny it. What did she say? She said I embarrassed her, that she never wanted to marry me in the first place. Her dad arranged it. She needed me to stay long enough to prove what kind of person I really was. What does that mean? Lesser than them. That's what she said. Lesser than us. Like I was some kind of experiment. I closed my eyes. I'm sorry, son. Dad, she told me I should have quit weeks ago. That Victor said I'd break eventually. That I was supposed to. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. She said they needed me to stay just long enough to show everyone I was useless. Every muscle in my body wanted to drive straight to that house, and no, not like that, not yet. "Where are you now?" I asked quietly. "Still at the house." Caroline left. I don't know where she went. "Pack a bag, come home." "Dad, right now, Jordan. Pack what you need and come home." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, okay. An hour later, my front door opened. Jordan walked in, carrying a single duffel bag. His face looked hollow, eyes red. The suit he'd been wearing all week was wrinkled tie missing. "Hey," I said. "Hey." He dropped the bag by the stairs and followed me to the kitchen. I put on a fresh pot of coffee. We sat at the table in silence while it brewed. I poured 2 cups, set one in front of him. He wrapped his hands around it, but didn't drink. "You okay?" I asked. "No." He looked at the coffee. "But I will be." "You don't have to go back there ever." "I know." More silence. The heater kicked on. The refrigerator hummed. Normal sounds in a house that suddenly felt like a refuge. Then Jordan lifted his head. His eyes were different. Still hurt, but something else underneath. Something harder. "Dad," he said quietly. "I don't want to be a victim anymore." I set my cup down. "You're not a victim." "I have been. For 9 days, I let them break me down. Let Victor humiliate me. Let Caroline lie to me." He looked directly at me. "But I'm done with that." "Jordan, well, I know you're planning something." His voice was steady now. "You've been too calm, too quiet. The way you kept telling me to hang on just a little longer, you weren't just being supportive. You were buying time." I didn't say anything. "Tell me," he said. "Tell me what you're doing. Let me help." I looked at my son across the kitchen table. 9 days ago, he'd left this house excited and hopeful. Now he sat here hollow-eyed and broken-hearted. But underneath that pain, I saw something else. I saw my son ready to fight. "Okay," I said. "I'll tell you everything." I looked at my son across the kitchen table. He was waiting for an answer, but every instinct I had told me to protect him, to keep him out of this. "Jordan, this situation with Victor is dangerous. He's already come after me. I don't want you involved any deeper than you already are." "Deeper?" Jordan's voice was steady. "Dad, he destroyed me. He humiliated me for 9 days. His daughter lied to me about a child. What more could they possibly do?" I saw the determination in his eyes, the anger underneath. And I realized he was right. Protecting him now meant treating him like he couldn't handle the truth. "Okay," I said quietly. "I'll tell you everything." I stood and grabbed my laptop from the living room, set it on the table between us. Then I started talking. Sterling Hospitality is drowning. $18.5 million in debt. 4 failed projects. Victor's been living beyond his means for years, and the banks are about to foreclose. He has 90 days, maybe less. Jordan listened without interrupting. "I liquidated everything I own. The rental properties I bought in 2008. My entire investment portfolio. My retirement fund. 42 years of savings." I pulled up the spreadsheet. $11.2 million. That's what it took. For what? To buy controlling interest. 65% of Sterling Hospitality. His eyes went wide. "You're buying Victor's company. What's I created a shell company, Pacific Northwest Investment Group. 3 men are going to walk into Sterling's boardroom and make an offer Victor can't refuse. Brian Mitchell, Timothy Brooks, Roger Bennett. Good men who owe me favors. They'll be the public faces. Victor won't know I'm behind it until it's too late. Jordan stared at me. You were going to use everything you have. For me. Not just for you. For justice. And because you deserve to work somewhere you're respected. Somewhere you can prove what you're actually capable of. His voice caught. Dad, but there's a problem. I closed the laptop. A police officer showed up at my door yesterday morning. Raymond Kemp, Financial Crimes Unit. He froze my accounts. Said it was standard procedure for large transactions, but I know better. Victor's using him to block me. So what do we do? My lawyer's fighting it. But it takes time. And time is what we don't have. Jordan leaned forward. Then let me help. 2 heads are better than 1. It's risky. If Victor figures out what he already knows you're his enemy, Dad. He sent a cop to your door. Let me be useful, please. I looked at my son. 24 hours ago, he'd been broken. Now he was asking to stand beside me. All right, I said. Let's figure this out together. Jordan pulled the laptop toward him. This Officer Kemp. Something's off about him. Let me dig into his background. What are you thinking? If Victor's using him, there has to be a reason. Leverage. Debt. Something. He opened a browser and started searching. Public records. Court documents. Property liens. I watched him work focused, methodical, the way I'd taught him to research investments back when he was in college. An hour passed. I made fresh coffee. Jordan barely looked up. Then he stopped. Dad, look at this. He turned the screen toward me. Court judgments. Multiple liens. Payment plan agreements. Gambling debts, Jordan said. Kemp's buried in them. Casino judgments going back 5 years. He owes over $200,000. I leaned closer. The documents were all public record. Anyone could find them if they knew where to look. But Victor had found them first. That's his leverage, Jordan said. Victor's paying off Kemp's debts. Has to be. That's how he got a cop to freeze your accounts. I stared at the evidence on the screen. We can use this. How? I don't know yet. But it's a vulnerability. My phone buzzed. Gregory's name. I'd texted him an hour ago asking him to come over. That's Gregory, I said. I asked him to join us. Gregory arrived 20 minutes later. Jordan showed him what he'd found. Gregory read through the court documents carefully, his investigator's mind cataloging every detail. It's not proof, he said finally. Not yet. But it's a lead we can follow. Can you track the money? I asked. Maybe. If Victor's been making payments to Kemp's creditors, there'll be a trail. Shell accounts, probably. Intermediaries. But if we dig deep enough, we'll find it, Jordan finished. Gregory looked at him, then at me. Your kid's sharp. I know. We spent the next 3 hours mapping out a strategy. Gregory would start tracing financial connections between Victor and Kemp's creditors. Jordan would continue digging through public records looking for anything else we could use. I'd keep pressure on Peter Donovan to fight the account freeze in court. It wasn't much, but it was something. It was past midnight when Gregory finally left. Jordan and I stayed at the kitchen table, papers and empty coffee cups scattered around us. My son looked at me. His eyes weren't hollow anymore. They were clear, determined. We're going to win this, Dad, together. For the first time in days, I believed him. Monday morning at 7, Jordan and I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open and a stack of printed documents between us. We'd been building a timeline on Officer Kemp when his gambling debt started, when the account freeze happened, looking for financial connections to Victor. "She's here," Jordan said, pointing at a court filing from 3 years ago. "First casino judgment, $60,000. That's when it started." I made a note. And the freeze order came Sunday morning, less than a week after I started moving money. Too fast to be coincidence. My phone rang. Gregory's name. "Edward, we need to talk. In person." "What's wrong?" "Not over the phone. I'm 10 minutes away." He arrived 30 minutes later. One look at his face told me something was seriously wrong. "And it's Malcolm Pierce," he said, standing in my living room. I felt my chest tighten. "What about him?" Malcolm Pierce was a business consultant I'd hired 3 weeks ago, came recommended by a colleague I trusted. I'd brought him in to do a deep assessment of Sterling Hospitality's financials. Professional, expensive, discreet, or so I'd thought. "I've been keeping an eye on him like you asked," Gregory said. "Yesterday I saw him meeting someone at a restaurant downtown. I couldn't get close enough to see who, but Malcolm looked nervous. More than nervous, scared." You think he's been compromised?" "I don't know, but something's off." Jordan looked between us. "Who's Malcolm Pierce?" "Business consultant," I explained. "Hired him to evaluate Sterling's worth. He knows I'm interested in the company. He's seen the financial analysis." "Does he know about the plan?" Jordan asked. Not all of it, but enough." I turned to Gregory. "You're sure he looked scared?" "Is he positive?" And he kept checking over his shoulder. "That's not normal behavior for a business lunch." I sat down on the couch. 3 weeks ago, I'd trusted Malcolm with sensitive information. If he'd been turned, if Victor had gotten to him somehow. "I need to test him," I said. I called Malcolm 20 minutes later. Kept my voice casual, friendly. "Malcolm, it's Edward Foster. Just checking in. I've been thinking about moving up the timeline. Maybe making the offer next week instead of waiting." There was a pause. Too long. "Next week." Malcolm's voice sounded tight. That's pretty aggressive, Edward." "I know, but I think we're ready." "What do you think?" Another pause. "Can I ask what changed? Just feeling confident about the numbers? You did good work." "Right. Yeah. Next week could work." He cleared his throat. "When exactly were you thinking?" I gave him a specific date. Wednesday made it sound definite. It was complete fiction. I had no intention of moving anything up. But if Malcolm was leaking information, Victor would hear about it. After I hung up, I looked at Gregory and Jordan. Now we wait. At 3 in the afternoon, Brian Mitchell called. "Edward, something weird just happened. I ran into a guy I know who works at Sterling Hospitality. He mentioned that Victor Hartley's been talking about some investor making a move next week. Thought you'd want to know." My blood went cold. Next week. The exact fake timeline I'd fed Malcolm this morning. "Thanks, Brian. I appreciate it." I hung up and looked at Gregory. "Malcolm leaked it. Victor knows about next week, which means he's been feeding Victor information all along," Gregory said quietly. "We have a traitor." Jordan leaned forward. "So what do we do?" "We don't confront him. Not yet. Let's see what else he gives away." But I felt the anger building. Malcolm had come recommended. I'd paid him good money, trusted him with details that could sink the entire plan, and he'd sold me out. "Who got to him?" I asked Gregory. "Victor, probably. But I don't know how. Leverage, money, blackmail. Find out." At 8 o'clock that night, my phone rang. "Malcolm's name on the screen," I answered. "Malcolm." "Edward." His voice was shaking, badly. I need to talk to you. Can we meet tomorrow morning? I kept my tone neutral. Sure, Malcolm. Where? Coffee shop on Morrison Street, 7 a.m. I'll be there. Thank you. Thank you. He hung up. I set the phone down and looked at Gregory and Jordan, who'd both stayed for dinner. He's going to confess, I said. How do you know? Jordan asked. Because he's terrified, and people who are terrified make mistakes. That night, I barely slept. Malcolm Pierce had been part of this plan from the beginning. I'd trusted him, paid him, and he'd been feeding information to Victor the whole time. The question now wasn't whether he'd betrayed me. The question was how much had he told Victor, and did I still have a chance to win? I arrived at the Morrison Street Cafe at 6:45 Tuesday morning. The place was filling up with the morning crowd, people getting coffee before work, living normal lives on a normal day. Malcolm Pierce was already there, sitting at a corner table. He looked terrible, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes. His hands were shaking when he wrapped them around his coffee cup. I sat down across from him, didn't order anything, just waited. He couldn't look at me directly. Edward, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I kept my voice level. Tell me what happened. He took a shaky breath. Victor Hartley found out I was helping you assess Sterling. I don't know how he knew initially. Maybe someone saw us meeting. Maybe he had me followed. But 3 weeks ago, he called me into his office. And he'd hired a private investigator. Had him dig into my past. Malcolm's voice cracked. He found something. 5 years ago, I had an affair. My wife doesn't know. No one knows. It was over fast, but Victor had evidence. Photos, hotel receipts. I waited. He told me if I didn't tell him what you were planning, he'd send everything to my wife, to my church, to my business partners. Edward, I couldn't. I couldn't lose my marriage, my reputation, everything I've built. So you started feeding him information? Yes. He looked down at his hands. I told him you were interested in Sterling, that you were evaluating the company's worth, that you had the means to make an offer. When did you tell him this? 3 days ago? Saturday. Malcolm's eyes were wet. You called me that morning about moving up the timeline, and I panicked. Victor had called me the night before, pressing for updates. So I told him everything. My chest tightened. Saturday, day 6. The day I'd finalized all the documents with Peter Donovan. The day before Kemp showed up at my door. So exactly what did you tell him? Malcolm's voice dropped to almost a whisper. The buyout price, $11.2 million. The timeline you were working on. The shell company structure, Pacific Northwest Investment Group. Your strategy to buy controlling interest and force him out. Everything. Everything. I'm so sorry, Edward. I tried to stop. I wanted to tell you earlier, but he kept pushing. Yesterday, he called again, wanted to know if you were moving up the timeline. No, that was a test, I said quietly. The information I gave you was false. Malcolm looked like he might be sick. I told him, God help me, I told him. We sat in silence for a moment. The cafe noise, espresso machines, conversations, morning routines felt very far away. I'll make this right, Malcolm said suddenly. I'll feed Victor false information. I'll help you. I stood up. You've done enough, Malcolm. Don't contact me again. Edward, please, I can fix this. No. I looked down at him. You can't. I walked out, leaving him sitting there alone with his coffee and his guilt. Outside, I sat in my truck with my hands gripping the steering wheel. Called Gregory. Malcolm confirmed everything I said when he answered. He told Victor 3 days ago. That's why Kemp came. Gregory was quiet for a long moment. Edward, this is bad. Victor knows your offer amount. He knows your timeline. He knows your strategy. How can you win this now? I stared at the steering wheel. I don't know, Gregory. I honestly don't know. What do you want me to do? I need to think. I'll call you back. I hung up and sat there in the parking lot. 10 minutes passed. Maybe more. I watched people walk by on the sidewalk. Normal people. People who weren't 67 years old fighting a battle they were about to lose. Malcolm had told Victor everything. Officer Kemp was blocking my money. My strategy was exposed. I was fighting someone with connections, with resources, with no conscience. Gregory's words echoed in my head. How can you win this? I didn't have an answer. I looked down at my phone, about to call Jordan and tell him we might be done. That's when I noticed it. 1 missed call. Unknown number. I'd check it when I could breathe again. I drove home from the cafe in a fog. My hands were on the wheel, but I didn't really see the road. Just kept hearing Malcolm's voice, everything. I told him everything. Jordan was waiting when I walked in. What did Malcolm say? I set my keys on the counter. He told Victor everything. The buyout price, the timeline, the shell company. All of it. When? 3 days ago, Saturday. Jordan's face went hard. So Kemp showing up Sunday wasn't a coincidence. Victor had 24 hours to set it up. Dad, what do we do now? I didn't have an answer. At noon, Gregory arrived. The three of us sat at the kitchen table with coffee none of us were drinking. Edward, Gregory said quietly, maybe it's time to stop. You tried. There's no shame in cutting your losses. I looked at the papers spread across the table. The numbers that represented 42 years of my life. Money that was partially frozen. A strategy Victor now knew inside and out. A timeline that was compromised. So what am I doing? I said more to myself than anyone else. I'm 67 years old. I should be fishing, playing cards with friends, not fighting billionaires who own cops and break people for sport. I thought about Jordan. 9 days of humiliation, being forced to shine shoes, to serve lunch like hired help, to believe his wife was pregnant when she was lying to his face, and now maybe all of it was meaningless. Maybe I'd gambled everything and lost. Maybe Gregory's right, I said. Maybe I can't win this. Jordan's chair scraped back. He stood up. Dad. No, I looked at him. Son, I appreciate that, but you don't get to quit. His voice was steady, strong. You taught me to stand up, after Mom died, after I got rejected by 3 colleges, after Caroline, after everything. You always said the same thing, 1 more round. When I wanted to give up, you made me go 1 more round. He looked at me across the table. Now I'm saying it to you. 1 more round, Dad. I stared at my son. Saw the man he'd become. The strength I'd helped him build now being offered back to me. Besides, Jordan said, sitting back down. What about that voicemail, the one you got this morning? I blinked. What voicemail? Your phone. You have a notification. I pulled out my phone, looked at the screen. 1 missed call. 1 new voicemail. Timestamp 6:30 a.m., right when I'd been sitting across from Malcolm. Unknown number. Portland area code. I hit play and put it on speaker. A man's voice came through. Younger than me. Calm. Serious. Mr. Foster, my name is Daniel Cross. I know you're trying to buy Sterling Hospitality. I know Victor Hartley is fighting you. I can help you destroy him. I have evidence, things that will end him completely. But I need your help to make them public. Meet me tonight. Riverside Park by the river. 6 p.m. Come alone. I'll be at the North Bench. I'll wait until 6:30. If you don't come, I'll understand. But if you want justice, Mr. Foster, I'm your last chance. The message ended. We sat in silence. Gregory Jordan and I staring at the phone. "Oh, could be a trap," Gregory said. "Victor setting you up." "Or it could be real," I said. Jordan leaned forward. "Who is Daniel Cross?" "I have no idea." Gregory shook his head. "Edward, this is exactly the kind of thing Victor would do. Lure you somewhere isolated, get you on record doing something questionable. Or," I interrupted, "this is someone who actually has something on Victor. Someone who needs help as much as I do." I looked at the clock on the wall. 2 in the afternoon. 4 hours until the meeting. "I'm going," I said. "Edward Asawank. And everything about this has been dangerous, Gregory. One more risk won't kill me." "It might," Gregory said quietly. Then it does." I stood up. "But I'm not quitting. Not after what Jordan just said. Not after everything." Jordan stood too. "I'm coming with you." "No." The message said, "Come alone." "Dad, it's no, son. If this is a trap, I'm not bringing you into it. If it's real, I need you here safe." I put my hand on his shoulder. "One more round. That's what you said. Let me take this one." At 5:45, I drove to Riverside Park. The sun was setting over the Willamette River, painting the water orange and pink. I parked in the small lot and walked toward the North Bench. A man was sitting there, maybe mid-30s, wearing a dark jacket and jeans. He was looking out at the water. When I got close, he stood and turned to face me. "Wait. Stop right here." The 4 words Daniel was about to say would change everything I thought I knew about Victor Hartley. "Before I reveal what he said, I need to know you're still following this journey. Comment, I'm here right now. And one important note, the story ahead contains fictionalized elements for educational purposes. If that's not for you, no hard feelings, you can stop right now. But if you want to know how this story ends, keep watching. Trust me, you won't see this coming." "Mr. Foster," he said quietly, "thank you for coming. My name is Daniel Cross." He paused, met my eyes. "Victor Hartley is my father." We sat on the North Bench as the river flowed past and the twilight faded to dusk. Daniel Cross looked at me with sharp eyes, mid-30s, self-possessed, with an underlying determination I recognized, because I'd seen it in my own mirror. I studied his face, looking for traces of Victor Hartley. Maybe in the jawline. Maybe in the way he held himself shoulders back like he was braced for a fight. "You said Victor Hartley is your father," I said carefully. "Explain." Daniel didn't look away. 36 years ago, my mother, Angela Cross, worked as a secretary at Sterling Hospitality. Victor was married to his first wife, then not Eleanor. She came later. I nodded slowly. "Go on." "They had an affair. My mother got pregnant." His voice was level factual, like he'd told this story before and learned to drain the emotion out. Victor gave her $50,000 and made her sign a non-disclosure agreement. He told her to disappear. Never contact him. Never tell anyone the child was his. And she took the money. She did. moved to the other side of Portland, raised me alone. He looked out at the river. Victor sent $2,000 a month for 35 years. Hush money. Keep her quiet. Keep me quiet. I watched his face, saw the old pain there, the childhood wounds that never fully healed. Boy, I grew up knowing my father didn't want me. Daniel continued. My mother worked 3 jobs even with that money. When I was little, I asked about him. She'd say, he's not ready to be a father, maybe someday. But that day never came. How do I know you're telling the truth? I asked. Daniel reached into a backpack beside him and pulled out a folder. Opened it on his lap. DNA test. Birth certificate with my mother's name and unknown listed for father. Bank records showing 36 years of payments from a shell company Victor controls. The pattern's unmistakable. I looked at the documents briefly. Professional. Thorough. The kind of evidence that would hold up. Why now? I asked. Why not go public years ago? I tried. Lawyers said the NDA my mother signed was legally binding. Media won't touch it without Victor's confirmation. Police said it's a civil matter, not criminal. He closed the folder. Ooh, Victor's rich, powerful. I'm nobody. I learned a long time ago that you don't fight people like him head on. You wait for the right moment, and this is it. I've been waiting for someone who could actually hurt him. Someone he underestimated. Daniel looked at me. You're that person, Mr. Foster. How do you know about me? I've been watching Victor for 20 years. I know about your son, what Victor did to him, the shoe shining. My stomach dropped. You saw that. I have sources inside Sterling. People Victor thinks are loyal but aren't. He paused. I know about Officer Kemp, about Malcolm Pierce. I know Victor thinks he's won. If you've been watching, you know I'm losing. Not yet, Daniel said. There's one more thing. Something Victor doesn't know I have. I waited. His voice went quiet. 10 years ago, my mother passed away. Car accident right here in Portland. Lost control on Highway 26, went off the road. I saw the pain flash across his face. Real grief still raw after a decade. Police said it was an accident. Mechanical failure. But I never believed it. Why not? Daniel met my eyes. Because 3 days before she died, she called Victor. I heard her. She told him she was tired of hiding, tired of the payments. She wanted to tell me the truth, wanted me to meet my father. He stopped, swallowed. Victor told her if she went public, she'd regret it. The words hung in the air between us. The river kept flowing. Somewhere people were having normal evenings, normal lives. 3 days later, Daniel said her car went off Highway 26. I looked at him carefully. Watched for signs he was lying, signs this was Victor's trap. But all I saw was a man carrying 10 years of grief and anger. You're saying my mother's death wasn't an accident. Daniel reached into his backpack and pulled out a second folder. Thicker, older. I've spent 10 years investigating, hired private investigators, found witnesses, tracked down people who worked on her car. He opened the folder. I saw pages of reports, photos, documents. Victor arranged it, Daniel said quietly. And I can prove it. He opened the thick folder on his lap. I need you to see this. I leaned closer as he pulled out the first document. This is from Derek Palmer, a licensed private investigator here in Portland. I hired him 10 years ago to investigate my mother's accident. He's been working on it ever since. I read the cover page. Professional letterhead. Detailed summary of investigation scope. Witness interviews. Photographs. Financial trails. Daniel turned to the next section. These are the mechanic records. My mother's car was serviced at Auto Care on Division Street 1 week before the accident. Standard maintenance brake check, oil change. The work order is signed by a Mr. Jackson. I looked at the signature. Neat handwriting. Date stamped. After the accident. Daniel continued. I paid an independent forensic mechanic to examine what was left of the car. Here's his report. The document was technical, but the conclusion was clear. The brake line showed signs of tampering, not natural wear. Cut marks consistent with tools, not road damage. Now look at this. Daniel pulled out a bank statement. 2 days before my mother's accident, there was a $20,000 transfer from a shell company called Cascade Holdings, LLC, to an account belonging to M. Jackson at a local credit union. And you can prove Victor owns Cascade Holdings, I can. The ownership chain took Derek 2 years to trace, but it leads back to Victor. My stomach was tight. The pieces were fitting together. Daniel handed me another document. This is a sealed affidavit. Derek tracked down Mr. Jackson in 2014. He'd left Auto Care right after my mother's accident and moved to Seattle. Derek convinced him to give a sworn statement. I read it carefully. Jackson's words were plain. A man matching Victor Hartley's description had paid him $20,000 to ensure a vehicle wouldn't stop properly. Jackson claimed he hadn't known anyone would die, thought it was insurance fraud. He was too terrified to testify publicly, but he'd given Derek this statement under seal. There are photos, too. Daniel spread several images on his lap. Grainy surveillance shots of Victor meeting someone in an industrial parking lot. Derek took these while tailing Victor. 1 week before my mother's accident. The final document was a timeline. I read it slowly. 3 days before the accident, Angela Cross calls Victor Hartley. Phone records confirm. 2 days before $20,000 transfer to M. Jackson. 1 day before Angela's car serviced at Auto Care. Day of accident, Angela Cross dies on Highway 26. 1 week after Mr. Jackson quits Auto Care and relocates to Seattle. I sat back. The folder was still open on Daniel's lap, evidence laid out like a prosecutor's case. This is substantial, I said quietly. Why haven't you given this to the police? I tried. They said it's circumstantial. Proving Victor owns the shell company is complicated. Jackson won't testify publicly. He's terrified Victor will come after him. The statute of limitations is murky. The district attorney said without Jackson's public testimony or a direct link proving Victor gave the order, they won't prosecute. But if this became public, Victor's reputation would be destroyed. Business partners would run. Banks would call his loans immediately. Even if he's never criminally prosecuted, the court of public opinion would end him. I looked at Daniel. Why me? Why now? Why not release this yourself? Because I'm nobody. If I go public, Victor's lawyers bury me. They destroy my credibility. They sue me for defamation for years. I can't fight that. Daniel met my eyes. But you have leverage. You're trying to buy his company. You have business associates, a platform. If you present this evidence to Sterling's board of directors during the buyout process, they have to act. You want me to use this to force him to sell? I want justice for my mother. You want justice for your son. We can help each other. I studied his face, saw sincerity, pain, determination. Victor has connections. I said. Officer Kemp, for example. How do I know he won't come after you after me? He will. That's why we move fast. We present everything at once. A public board meeting. Multiple witnesses. He can't silence all of us. I thought about Jordan, about the plan, about everything on the line. If I do this, I said slowly, I'm not just buying a company. I'm accusing a man of taking another person's life. Daniel's voice was steady. Of taking my mother's life. Yes, I looked out at the river, thought about my son on his knees, about Angela Cross, who'd wanted her son to know his father, about justice and revenge and the thin line between them. I turned back to Daniel. If I help you with this, there's no going back. For either of us. Daniel looked me in the eye. I've been ready for 10 years, Mr. Foster. Question is, are you ready? I extended my hand. Call me Edward. We shook. Let's destroy him, I said. At 8 o'clock that night, I brought Daniel Cross home. Gregory and Jordan were already there, waiting in my living room. The tension was immediate. Gregory stood when we walked in his investigator's instincts on high alert. This is Daniel Cross, I said. He has information about Victor Hartley. Gregory's eyes narrowed. How do we know this isn't Victor's trap, sending someone to gain our trust, extract our plans? Daniel set his backpack on the coffee table. Calm, unhurried. Because Victor doesn't know I exist. He erased me 36 years ago. He pulled out the folder, handed Gregory the DNA test, the bank records, Derek Palmer's PI license and reports. Gregory examined each document with professional skepticism. Why now? Why contact Edward? I've been watching Victor for 20 years. When I saw Mr. Foster's battle starting, I recognized my opportunity. Someone he'd underestimated. Someone with leverage. Jordan stepped closer. You said Victor's your father. Did he do to you what he did to me? Daniel looked at Jordan. Really looked at him. Worse. He destroyed your confidence. He erased my existence. Like I never existed at all. Something passed between them. Recognition. Two men who'd been broken by the same person. I'm sorry about your mother, Jordan said quietly. I'm sorry about what he did to you. Nobody deserves that treatment. Gregory was still examining documents. If this is real, and I'm not saying I believe it yet, it's bigger than a business buyout. You're accusing a man of serious crimes. I know, I said, but we can't let him keep destroying people. Gregory looked at me for a long moment, then at Daniel, then back at the evidence. All right, he said finally. Let's talk. We moved to the kitchen table. The four of us, Edward, Jordan, Gregory, Daniel, surrounded by documents and coffee cups and laptops. It was past 9 when we started planning. By midnight, we had a strategy. 5 prongs, Gregory said, writing on a legal pad. We hit him from every direction at once. Prong 1, he continued. I report Officer Kemp to Oregon State Police Internal Affairs. Bypass Portland entirely. Victor probably has connections there. Go straight to state level. What evidence? Jordan asked. Gambling debts. Suspicious timing on the account freeze. Pattern of behavior. It won't get Kemp arrested immediately, but it starts an official investigation. Takituyum. Prong 2. Jordan said, pulling my laptop toward him. I compile everything on Kemp. Public records timeline financial irregularities. Give the state investigators a complete dossier. Gregory nodded. Good. Prong 3. Daniel and I looked at each other. We prepare a new buyout offer for Sterling's board, I said. Same terms. 11.2 million for 65%. But this time we attach something extra. A summary, Daniel added. Evidence about my mother. Not everything, just enough for the board to understand what kind of man Victor is. Plus, I said, we expose Malcolm Pierce. Show the board he was feeding Victor information. Discredit anything Victor claims to know about our plans. Prong 4, Gregory said. Daniel attends the board meeting, reveals his identity, presents evidence directly. Daniel nodded. They need to hear it from me. See my face. It can't just be documents. And Prong 5, I said. We move fast. Tomorrow. We don't give Victor time to counter. Gregory looked up. Tomorrow, that's so aggressive. I know. But every day we wait is another day for Victor to figure out what we're doing. We're still on day 9, Jordan said, checking his phone. It's almost midnight. If we move tomorrow, day 10, can we get a board meeting that fast? Brian Mitchell can, I said. He's got connections. If I call him tonight, tell him it's urgent, he can arrange an emergency session for tomorrow afternoon. Gregory drummed his fingers on the table. All right. Task assignments. Jordan, you work overnight on the Kemp dossier. I'll contact state police first thing tomorrow morning, file the formal complaint. Edward, you call your business associates, Mitchell, Brooks, Bennett. Brief them. Make sure they're ready to walk into that boardroom. And me? Daniel asked. You, Gregory said, review your evidence. Get ready to look Victor Hartley in the eye and tell him what he did. We worked through the night. Coffee kept us going. Documents spread across every surface. Jordan at the laptop compiling records. Gregory on his phone making notes for his state police report. Daniel and I reviewing the buyout proposal, deciding what to include for the board. Around 2 in the morning, I made sandwiches. We took a break, standing in my kitchen, eating turkey and cheese like it was a normal night. Jordan and Daniel stood together by the sink. I heard them talking. Different methods, Daniel was saying, but identical cruelty. He destroyed your confidence. He erased my existence. But we're still here, Jordan said. We survived him. We did. And tomorrow we make sure no one else has to. Gregory pulled me aside, kept his voice low. Edward, if this works, you're a genius. If it fails, I lose everything, and I make myself a powerful enemy. He's already your enemy, but yes. I looked across the kitchen. My son, my best friend, a stranger who'd become an ally. Then we can't afford to fail. By 3 in the morning, we had a battle plan. Every piece in position, every move calculated. The 4 of us stood up from that table, exhausted but ready. Daniel looked at me. Tomorrow. He corrected himself. Today. Today we end this. I nodded. Together. Day 10 was about to begin. The final battle had come. We slept for 2 hours. Maybe 3. At 6 in the morning, I was back in the kitchen making coffee and frying eggs for 4 people who looked like they'd been through a war. Final review, Gregory said, pouring his 3rd cup. Everyone clear on their role. We went through it one more time. Then at 7 o'clock, we split up. Gregory drove to Salem, Oregon's state capital, an hour south. He called me at 9:30 from the Oregon State Police Internal Affairs Office. Filed the complaint, he said. Showed them everything. Kemp's gambling debts from public records. The suspicious timing on your account freeze. The pattern. They're taking it seriously, Edward. Different jurisdiction from Portland. They're opening an immediate investigation. How immediate? They're sending someone to interview Kemp this afternoon. One prong down. Jordan stayed at my house with his laptop compiling the comprehensive dossier on Kemp. Court records, property liens, a timeline of debts cross-referenced with the account freeze. He created a visual document that made the correlation impossible to miss. At noon, he called. Dossier's done. Sent it to the state police. They're moving fast, already requested additional financial records from Portland PD. He'd also put together everything on Malcolm Pierce. The timeline of his betrayal. Proof he'd been feeding Victor information. Anything Victor claimed to know about our strategy could now be discredited. 2 prongs down. I spent the morning coordinating. At 8, I called Brian Mitchell. We're moving today. Emergency board meeting at 2 p.m. Are you ready? Ready. Timothy and Roger are with me right now. At 9, I met Peter Donovan at his office. Gave him the brief version of our plan. He listened carefully, made notes, asked the right legal questions. It's aggressive, he said finally. But it's legal. Sterling's board has a fiduciary duty to consider serious allegations against their CEO. If you present credible evidence of criminal behavior, they have to act. By 10 o'clock, I'd finalized the buyout documents. $11.2 million for 65% of Sterling Hospitality. Same terms as before, but this time we attached something extra, a summary of Daniel's evidence. Not the full details, just enough to make the board understand what kind of man they were dealing with. Eugene Davis at the bank confirmed we had enough liquid cash for the deposit, despite Kemp's freeze on some accounts. At noon, Brian called back. I delivered the offer and evidence summary to the board members. Gerald Chambers, Albert Griffin, Dorothy Clark, and the others. Chambers called me 10 minutes ago. He said, and I quote, "These allegations are extremely serious. We need to hear this directly. Emergency meeting approved for 2 p.m. 3 prongs down. Daniel spent the morning reviewing his evidence with me. Derek Palmer's investigative reports, the bank transfers, the timeline, the photographs. We went through it methodically, making sure every piece was in order. What will you say? I asked him. The truth, exactly what happened. No embellishment, just facts. He was nervous. I could see it in the way he kept adjusting his tie, the way his hands trembled slightly when he held the folders. You've waited 10 years for this, I said. You're ready. He looked at me. What if I freeze? What if I see him and I can't speak? Then Jordan and I will be there. Gregory will be there. You're not alone. 4 prongs down. At noon, we reconvened at my house. The board had agreed. 2 o'clock at Sterling Hospitality headquarters. We put on suits and ties. I borrowed Jordan's spare jacket. Mine was too old, too worn for what we were about to do. Daniel organized his evidence into professional-looking folders. We reviewed one last time who would say what when. At 12:30, we drove to Sterling. Edward Jordan and Daniel in my truck. Gregory following in his own car. Brian, Timothy, and Roger would meet us there. The drive took 15 minutes. Nobody spoke much. Jordan stared out the window. Daniel kept his hands folded in his lap, still and controlled. Gregory drove behind us like an escort. We arrived at 1:45, parked in the visitor lot. I looked up at the building. 20 stories of glass and steel. The same building where I'd seen my son on his knees 9 days ago. Jordan looked at it too. Last time I was here, I left through the back exit, carrying a box of personal items. This time, I said, you walk in the front door, with me. Daniel stepped out of the truck. And with me, Gregory joined us. The four of us stood together in the parking lot, looked at those glass doors. Ready? I asked. Jordan squeezed my shoulder. Together, Dad. We walked toward the entrance, side by side. This was it. At 2 o'clock, we walked into the executive boardroom on Sterling Hospitality's 3rd floor. The room was designed to intimidate long mahogany table that could seat 20 high-backed leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling glass windows, offering a panoramic view of Portland's skyline. The kind of room where empires were built and destroyed. The board of directors was already seated. Gerald Chambers occupied the head of the table. Board chairman, mid-60s, silver hair, combed back reading glasses perched on his nose. He had the bearing of someone who'd spent 40 years in corporate boardrooms. Albert Griffin sat to his right, the CFO, early 50s, with stacks of financial reports in front of him, and the weary look of a man who'd been carrying bad news for too long. Dorothy Clark, the independent director, sat across from Albert. Late 60s, sharp eyes, yellow legal pad covered in notes. She'd made her fortune in commercial real estate and didn't suffer fools. Charles Warren, Victor's personal lawyer, sat near the middle, 50-something expensive suit briefcase at his feet. He looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Kevin Bradley, Victor's longtime business partner and fellow shareholder, sat with arms folded, weathered face. The kind of man who'd built things with his hands before he started signing contracts. Eleanor Hartley, Victor's wife and major shareholder, sat rigid and elegant in a cream-colored suit. Her face was composed, but her hands were folded too tightly in her lap. 2 other board members filled out the table names. I'd learn later, faces that watched, but rarely spoke. And at the opposite end, from Gerald, Victor Hartley held court. Expensive charcoal suit, silk tie. The confidence of a man who believed he owned everything in the room, including the people. Brian Mitchell, Timothy Brooks, and Roger Bennett entered first. Professional, polished. They'd done this before. Gerald looked up over his glasses. Gentlemen, welcome. Thank you for agreeing to meet on such short notice. I understand Pacific Northwest Investment Group has a proposal for us. Thank you for your time, Brian said. We appreciate the board hearing us. Victor glanced at them with the mild interest of someone humoring children. He didn't see the threat yet. Then Jordan and I walked through the door. Victor's face went through 3 distinct changes. Surprise eyebrows raising, mouth opening slightly. Then anger, jaw tightening, eyes narrowing. Then forced control, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. What is he doing here? He pointed at me like I was something unpleasant he'd stepped in. Gerald adjusted his glasses. Mr. Foster represents Pacific Northwest Investment Group. They've submitted a formal buyout offer that this board is legally obligated to consider. Victor laughed. Not a chuckle, a full laugh. This is absurd. Gerald, that's just a contractor, a builder, and his... He looked at Jordan. His son. The one who couldn't cut it here. I met Victor's eyes, held his gaze, said absolutely nothing. Then I pulled out the chair beside Brian Mitchell and sat down. Calm, unhurried. Jordan sat next to me. Back straight, shoulders back. Not the man who'd left this building through the back exit with a box of personal items 9 days ago. Gentlemen, Gerald said firmly, let's maintain professional decorum. Mr. Mitchell, please present your proposal. Brian stood and opened a leather portfolio. Pacific Northwest Investment Group is offering $11.2 million for a 65% controlling stake in Sterling Hospitality. The terms are outlined in the documents before you. The board members examined their copies. Dorothy Clark made notes with a gold pen. Albert Griffin studied the numbers with the intensity of someone checking math on a life raft. Victor leaned back in his chair. We don't need outside investment. Sterling Hospitality is perfectly stable financially. This is a waste of the board's time. Albert Griffin set down the proposal, looked at Victor, then at the rest of the board. "No, Victoria," he said quietly. "I think we need to have an honest conversation about our financial situation. Albert, the board deserves the truth." Albert's voice was steady, but his hands shook slightly. Sterling Hospitality currently owes $18.5 million to various creditors. We have 4 major projects that have failed in the last 18 months. Payroll has been delayed twice this quarter. Our banking consortium is demanding full payment within 60 days, or they begin foreclosure proceedings. Victor's face turned red. Those are temporary cash flow issues. We have major contracts pending that will resolve everything. Dorothy Clark set down her pen with a sharp click. "What contracts, Victor, that I serve on this board? I review quarterly reports. I haven't seen a single new contract proposal in 6 months. We're in active negotiations with whom?" Victor's jaw tightened. "Several parties. Confidential at this stage." Gerald held up his hand. "The point, Victor, is that this board has a fiduciary responsibility to our shareholders. When a serious offer is presented, we must give it due consideration." Victor changed tactics. He leaned forward, pointing at me. "You want to talk about due diligence? Fine. Let's discuss who we're actually dealing with here." He looked around the table. "I had Edward Foster investigated. He's a small-time contractor, builds houses. This $11 million, that's probably every cent he's scraped together in 40 years. And here's the best part, he can't even access most of it. His accounts are currently frozen under investigation for suspicious financial activity." I let him finish. Let the words hang in the air. Then I spoke for the first time, my voice level and calm. "The freeze was partially lifted this morning. Oregon State Police are now conducting an investigation into why it was issued in the first place. They have some interesting questions about the officer who filed the order. It was a stretch of the truth." But Victor didn't know that. His confidence flickered. Just for a second, but I saw it. Brian Mitchell stood again. "There's one more matter the board should be made aware of. It concerns company history and personal conduct that may impact Sterling's reputation and legal standing." Gerald frowned. "What matter are you referring to?" Timothy Brooks gestured to the supplementary documents clipped to the back of the proposal. "It's detailed in these materials." I watched the board members flip to the attachments. Watched them read the summary Daniel had prepared. Angela Cross. The affair 36 years ago. The hush money payments. The timing of her death. The investigation Derek Palmer had conducted. Eleanor Hartley's face went completely pale. She kept reading, but her hands began to tremble. She set the document down, picked it up again, read more. Kevin Bradley looked up, his weathered face confused and angry. "Victor, what the hell is this Angela Cross situation? I have no idea what they're talking about." Victor's voice was too loud. "This is slander. Defamation. My lawyers will—" Charles Warren leaned close to Victor, whispering urgently. "Mr. Hartley, I strongly advise we discuss this privately before you make any further statements." "No." Victor slapped his hand on the table. "I won't be threatened by lies and manufactured The door to the boardroom opened. A man walked in, mid-30s, dark hair, sharp, intelligent eyes. He moved slowly, deliberately, looking around the room, taking in each face, each reaction. Then his gaze locked on Victor Hartley, and I watched all the color drain from Victor's face. Daniel Cross walked into the boardroom with calm purpose. He carried a folder. His eyes never left Victor. Gerald Chambers frowned. "Sir, this is a closed board meeting. You cannot. My name is Daniel Cross." Daniel's voice was steady. He paused. "Let it sink in. Victor Hartley is my father." The room erupted. Gasps, confusion, chairs scraping, everyone talking at once. Eleanor Hartley. "What is he saying?" Dorothy Clark. "Who is this man?" Victor stood, his face cycling through emotions, shock, fear, anger. "I don't know who you are. This is some kind of scam. 36 years ago." Daniel said, still walking toward the table. "You had an affair with my mother, Angela Cross. She was your secretary. She got pregnant. You paid her $50,000 to disappear and never contact you again." He placed the folder on the table, pushed it toward the board members. DNA test. Birth certificate showing Angela Cross as mother-father listed as unknown. Bank records showing 36 years of monthly payments from your shell company, Cascade Holdings, to my mother. $2,000 every month to keep her silent. The board members opened the folder, passed documents between them. Kevin Bradley examined the DNA test. "This looks legitimate. It's forged." Victor's voice rose. "He's lying. This is a conspiracy between him and Foster to blackmail me." Daniel's voice stayed calm. "I never met Mr. Foster until 2 days ago. But we have something in common. We both love people you tried to destroy." Eleanor's face went from shock to anger. "Victor, tell me this isn't true." "Eleanor, don't listen to him." She stood, backed away from him. "Tell me, do you have a son you never told me about? It was before we married, it was... So it's true." Her voice was rising now. Daniel didn't let Victor recover. "But I'm not here just to tell you I'm your son. I'm here because 10 years ago my mother died in a car accident." The room went silent, everyone listening. His voice stayed controlled, but I could hear the emotion underneath. 3 days before she died, she called Victor. I heard that conversation. She said she was tired of hiding, tired of the payments. She wanted to go public, wanted me to know who my father was. He pulled out another set of documents. Victor told her if she went public, she'd regret it. He placed them on the table. 2 days later, Victor transferred $20,000 to a mechanic named Jackson. 1 day after that, my mother's car was serviced by Mr. Jackson. The next day, my mother's brakes failed on Highway 26. She didn't survive. The board members sat frozen. Charles Warren, Victor's lawyer, spoke urgently. "Mr. Hartley, I strongly advise you not to say anything further." Victor ignored him. "This is insane. You can't prove anything." "It was an accident." "The police said it was an accident." "The police said mechanical failure," Daniel replied. "Because that's what it looked like. But I hired a private investigator." He tapped the folder. "Bank transfer from your shell company to Mr. Jackson." Jackson's sealed affidavit admitting he was paid to sabotage the brake line. Photographs of you meeting Jackson 1 week before my mother died. A timeline showing it all. Dorothy Clark read the documents, her hand covering her mouth. "Oh my God." Albert Griffin looked up. "Victor, is this true?" Lies, all lies. He's conspiring with Foster to ruin me. Daniel's voice rose for the first time. You took my mother's life. You erased me. You paid someone to ensure she couldn't stop her car. Eleanor sat down hard. Looked at Victor like he was a stranger. Kevin Bradley stood. Victor, I can't be part of this. I resigned from the board, effective immediately. Gerald Chambers cleared his throat. Mr. Hartley, in light of these allegations, I move for immediate suspension pending investigation. I second, Dorothy Clark said. Victor looked around the table desperately. Charles, do something. Charles Warren was packing his briefcase. I'm your attorney, Victor, not your accomplice. I advise you to remain silent and hire criminal defense counsel. And this is my company. My father founded this company. I stood. Spoke for the first time since Daniel entered. Not anymore. Everyone turned to look at me. I kept my voice calm. The board has a choice. Accept Pacific Northwest Investment Group's $11.2 million offer take on the debt restructure and save 140 jobs. Or watch the banks foreclose in 60 days and everyone loses everything. Gerald looked at Victor, then at me. Mr. Hartley, do you have a counteroffer? This is extortion. They're blackmailing. Do you have a counteroffer? Victor had nothing. Then I call for a vote. Gerald looked around the table. All in favor of accepting Pacific Northwest Investment Group's offer and transferring 65% ownership to them. One by one, hands went up. Dorothy, Albert, Gerald himself. One motion passes. Gerald extended his hand to me. Mr. Foster, Sterling hospitality is yours. I shook his hand, looked at Victor. One more thing. My son Jordan Foster will serve as Chief Operating Officer, effective immediately. Victor opened his mouth, but no words came out. Victor Hartley stood at that boardroom table surrounded by people who'd once feared him. Now they looked at him with disgust, fear, and betrayal. Eleanor had moved to the far end of the room. Daniel Cross stood facing him, the son he'd erased, now the man who'd exposed him. Jordan squeezed my hand under the table. We'd won. 6 months had passed since that boardroom confrontation. 6 months since Victor Hartley's empire crumbled. 6 months since justice, real justice, had been served. It was Sunday morning again, 8 o'clock, and I was back in my kitchen, standing at the same stove where this story began, cooking the same breakfast I'd made countless times before: eggs, bacon, toast. But everything was different now. Coffee's ready, Dad, Jordan said, setting 2 mugs on the table. He moved with an ease I hadn't seen in years, maybe ever. The weight he'd carried for so long was gone. Thanks, son. I plated the eggs and brought them to the table. Emma should be here any minute. Yeah, a small smile crossed his face. I think she's nervous about meeting you officially. She's been here 3 times already. For dinner. This is Sunday breakfast. That's different. He was right. Sunday breakfast had always been our tradition. Susan's tradition, really. She'd insisted on it when Jordan was young, no matter how busy the week got. Sunday morning was family time. After she passed, Jordan and I had kept it going. Even during those dark 9 days when he was trapped at Sterling. I'd still made breakfast every Sunday, alone in this kitchen, hoping he'd come home. The doorbell rang. Jordan stood quickly, smoothing his shirt. I'll get it. I listened to him greet Emma at the door, heard her laugh at something he said. When they came into the kitchen, I saw what Jordan saw in her. Emma Richardson was 30, a nurse at Providence, Portland. She had kind eyes and a genuine smile, no artifice, no calculation. The exact opposite of Caroline in every way that mattered. Mr. Foster, she said warmly, thank you for having me. It's Edward, please. and you're welcome here anytime. I meant it. After everything Jordan had been through, seeing him with someone who treated him with simple respect and kindness felt like witnessing a miracle. We sat down to eat, and the conversation flowed naturally. Emma asked about the Morrison project, the 40-unit affordable housing complex we were finishing on the east side. She'd grown up in that neighborhood, she said. Her parents still lived there. We're cutting the ribbon next month, Jordan told her. You should come. Bring your folks. They'd love that. Emma looked at me. Jordan says you're only working part-time now. Advisor role. I confirmed. Jordan runs foster hospitality day to day. I just show up when he needs someone to argue with. Which is never, Jordan said. You built something good, Dad. I'm just trying not to mess it up. You're not messing it up. You're making it better. And he was. In 6 months, Jordan had transformed Sterling Hospitality, now Foster Hospitality, into something Susan would have been proud of. The culture had changed completely. Fair wages, ethical practices, respect up and down the chain of command. Henry Tucker, the maintenance worker who'd shown Jordan kindness during those awful 9 days, was now director of facilities. The board included Brian Mitchell, Timothy Brooks, and Roger Bennett, good people who'd stood with us from the beginning. The company's new focus wasn't just profit. It was community, affordable housing, ethical hotels, projects that actually helped people. All 140 jobs had been saved. Improved, really. After breakfast, Emma and Jordan went for a walk along the river. I watched them go, then returned to the kitchen to clean up. As I washed the dishes, my eyes drifted to the photo of Susan on the counter, the same one I'd looked at during those dark days when I didn't know if I could save Jordan. We did it, sweetheart, I whispered. We got him back. I thought about Victor Hartley. He'd lost everything, the company first. Then Eleanor divorced him, taking most of what remained. The criminal investigation into Angela Cross's death was ongoing. Daniel's evidence had given prosecutors enough to move forward. Victor's reputation in Portland's business community was destroyed. He'd tried to fight back, at first hiring expensive lawyers and spinning stories to the press, but the evidence was overwhelming. Eventually, even his lawyers had advised him to stay quiet. Caroline had divorced Jordan 3 months ago. She'd tried to get a large settlement, but the prenup held. She received a modest payout and moved to Seattle, where she was reportedly trying to remarry. Word was it wasn't going well. The Hartley name carried a stench now. Officer Raymond Kemp had been fired from the Portland Police Bureau. The internal affairs investigation Gregory had triggered had uncovered not just his connection to Victor, but a pattern of corruption stretching back years. He was currently awaiting trial on multiple charges. Malcolm Pierce had left Portland, entirely relocating to Arizona. I'd heard through Gregory that he was working as a freelance consultant under a different name. I felt no satisfaction in his downfall, just a quiet disappointment that he'd chosen fear over integrity. Daniel Cross came by occasionally to consult on projects. He'd found peace, I thought. Knowing his mother's death hadn't been in vain, that Victor had finally faced consequences, it seemed to have lifted something from him. He'd legally changed his last name from Hartley to Cross, his mother's name. I want to honor her, he'd told me. Not him. The kitchen was clean now. I poured myself another cup of coffee and sat at the table looking around the room. This kitchen, this house, I'd nearly lost it all, the house, the savings, everything I'd built over 42 years of careful work. $11.2 million. Every penny I'd saved, every property I'd accumulated, my entire retirement, All of it had gone into buying sterling hospitality and saving my son. 9 days. That's how long Jordan had suffered before I could act. 9 days of humiliation, manipulation, and psychological torture while I worked behind the scenes to put the pieces in place. Was it worth it? I looked at the photo of Susan again. Thought about Jordan walking along the river with a good woman who made him smile. Thought about foster hospitality and the 40 families who'd soon have affordable housing. Thought about Henry Tucker and his promotion. Thought about 140 workers who had their jobs and their dignity. Yes, absolutely yes. This was never about revenge. It was never about destroying Victor Hartley for the sake of destruction. It was about justice. It was about restoring what he'd taken: Jordan's dignity, his confidence, his future. And it was about proving something I'd learned over 67 years, that you don't need violence or cruelty to defeat cruelty. You need patient strategy and the willingness to stand up when standing up costs you everything. The door opened. Jordan and Emma came back laughing about something. They sat down at the table and Jordan poured Emma more coffee without asking, the kind of small, attentive gesture that showed he'd learned what real partnership looked like. Emma wants to know if we need volunteers for the Morrison ribbon cutting, Jordan said. Always, I replied. The more community involvement, the better. Emma leaned forward. I work with some families who could really use those apartments. Is there an application process? Talk to Jordan. He handles tenant selection now. But yes, we're prioritizing people who actually need affordable housing, not investors or flippers. That's... Emma paused, choosing her words. That's really different from how most developers operate. We're not most developers, Jordan said quietly. Not anymore. After they left, Jordan was driving Emma to her shift at the hospital. I found myself alone in the kitchen again. The Sunday morning sun slanted through the windows, warming the room. Everything was quiet, peaceful. My phone buzzed with a text from Gregory Kemp's trial starts next month. They want you to testify. I replied that I would be there. Another message followed this time from Daniel asking about Tuesday's board meeting and whether he could review the new project proposal with me first. I told him to come by Monday afternoon. Setting the phone down, I walked to the window. From there, I could see the street where Jordan used to park for Sunday breakfast, back when he was still with Caroline, arriving tense and exhausted. That version of my son is gone. The man who left this morning with Emma, confident, happy, purposeful, is who he has always been beneath Victor's manipulation and Caroline's cruelty. I spent 42 years building financial security, working long days, saving carefully, investing wisely, planning for a comfortable retirement. Then I gave it up in 9 days to save my son. Some might think I am foolish starting over at 67 with almost nothing in the bank. They would be wrong about the nothing. I have everything that matters. I have my son back, the real Jordan, not the broken man Victor tried to shape. I have a business guided by principles Susan would respect. I have the knowledge that 140 families can pay their bills because we saved their jobs. I have Sunday breakfasts in this kitchen, and perhaps soon a daughter-in-law who treats him with the respect he deserves. I have justice, not revenge, but justice. Victor Hartley now faces criminal charges for what he did to Angela Cross. The legal system will deal with him. That is what justice means: accountability, through proper channels, not personal vendetta. I do not need to act further. I picked up Susan's photograph. We shared 40 years of marriage. It has been 23 years since cancer took her. Yet when I face hard choices, I still hear her voice. Protect our boy, no matter the cost. I told her softly that I had protected him and would do it again. The kitchen was warm and quiet. Outside, Portland was waking cars, passing neighbors, walking dogs, life moving on. Inside, I felt a peace I had not known in months. It was the peace that comes from walking through fire and emerging with integrity intact, from spending everything and discovering you are richer than before. My phone buzzed again. Jordan thanked me for breakfast and said Emma liked me. He would see me at the office tomorrow. I told him she was good for him and not to let her go. He replied immediately, not a chance. I looked around the kitchen. It had witnessed Susan's laughter, Jordan's childhood, long Sunday mornings, the dark days after her death, and the terrible call from Sterling's loading dock when my son was broken and humiliated. Now it held a new beginning. The room looked unchanged, yet everything was different. When I make Sunday breakfast now, I am not repeating an old habit. I am celebrating victory, not merely over Victor, but over the belief that power and money always prevail, that good people should stay silent, that one person cannot challenge a corrupt system. We proved otherwise through patience, strategy, evidence, and sacrifice. I think of others trapped as Jordan was manipulated by their own Victor Hartleys, believing they must endure humiliation because the alternative seems impossible. There is always a choice. It may be costly and sleepless, but it exists. Dignity is not taken. It is surrendered, and it can always be reclaimed. I washed my mug and set it away. Standing before Susan's photo once more, I told her we had raised a good man, and now he could live fully as himself. The sun rose higher. Tomorrow I would review Daniel's proposal. Tuesday I would attend the meeting. Next month I would watch families receive keys to homes they could afford. But today I would sit in this kitchen, grateful. I kissed Susan's photo and whispered that we had done well. Outside, Portland carried on its ordinary Sunday. Inside, I sat with my memories and my hard-won peace. The story that began here with breakfast and a terrible call had come full circle. And the breakfast had never tasted sweeter. And to you listening to this story, remember this: I'm not a hero. I'm just a father who refused to watch his son be destroyed. This family story taught me that sometimes love demands everything you have: your savings, your security, your comfortable retirement. But it also taught me something deeper. When I sat in that kitchen on day one, hearing Jordan's broken voice on the phone, I wanted revenge. I wanted to hurt Victor Hartley the way he'd hurt my son. But my wife Susan, God rest her soul, she taught me better. She used to say, "The Lord works through patience, not rage." And she was right. This dad revenge story isn't about violence or cruelty. It's about strategic justice, about dismantling evil through evidence and integrity, not through becoming evil yourself. Don't be like me in one way. Don't wait until your loved ones are broken before you act. If you see injustice happening, speak up early. Use your voice before the damage goes too deep. But do be like me in this: never give up on the people you love. Never accept that power and money always win. This family story proves that ordinary people can stand against corruption when they're willing to pay the price. My dad revenge wasn't about destruction. It was about restoration. Jordan's dignity. Angela Cross's memory. Justice for everyone Victor ever crushed. Looking back now, I realize this wasn't just about saving Jordan. It was about showing him, and maybe showing you, that integrity still matters. That patience and strategy can defeat cruelty. That one person armed with truth and willing to sacrifice everything can change the outcome. Would I do it again? In a heartbeat. Because some things, family, dignity, justice, are worth more than any retirement account. If this family story moved you, if you faced your own battles against powerful people who thought they were untouchable, share this video. Leave a comment telling me your story. Subscribe to this channel because every week I bring you real stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things when pushed to their limits. Thank you for staying with me to the end of this journey. Thank you for listening to a father's fight for his son. And one final note, the stories on this channel contain some fictionalized elements created for educational purposes. If this type of content isn't for you, please feel free to explore other videos that better suit your preferences. But if you believe in justice, dignity, and the power of standing up for what's right, then you're in the right place. Until next time, remember, dignity isn't given, it's claimed.